What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Wrestling with Johners. This is episode 22, and today we're going to be talking about NXT and NXT UK from this week's episode, the 30th of January 2019 on the WWE Network. We're also going to be having a look at the Royal Rumble from this previous Sunday, just gone. But I've got another guest host for me today. So last episode I had one of my wrestling friends, Matt Bayliss, who jumped on board for the Takeover review, and today I've got David Anderson. So welcome, David.
Good to be here, or good to be part of the show. I've been listening for a couple of times and really enjoyed it, so glad to be part of it.
Excellent. Well, it's fantastic to have you on board. David's going to be helping us review the Rumble and NXT and NXT UK from last night. But just to get to know a little bit about yourself, David, hopefully, you know, this won't be the only time we'll have you on board, so let our listeners get to know you a little bit better. Tell us a little bit about your wrestling fandom. How did you first get interested in wrestling? What was your first memory? Tell us a little bit about how you kind of really got hooked on professional wrestling.
Let's wind the clock back to the medieval times, shall we? Well, probably first memories were sitting in front of the TV in front of World of Sport, like a lot of bit older fans. You know, and then obviously, actually one of my first memories of, you know, your big time WCW or WWE, people might be surprised to learn that the first one I watched was WCW. It was on night time here, and you'd get it at like 1 o'clock in the morning, and, you know, you had Sid and Lex Luger and Sting and Ric Flair and the Horsemen, all that good stuff, you know.
Remember it very well.
And my first actual big event that I went to, which a lot of people around my age, was actually SummerSlam 92. I was up there in about row 89 or something with my girlfriend at the time, but, you know, it was a spectacle, and even just walking down to the arena, you had, like, you know, you couldn't see the street for people, and it was just the whole, you know, event, and the whole, just the feeling of it, you know. It's like we're getting something special, and hopefully we will again, you know, because everybody's crying out to get another pay-per-view over here, aren't they? So we've got Takeover, so I suppose that's kind of, you know, heading in the right direction.
Yeah, to get another big event like SummerSlam. I mean, I was at SummerSlam 92, and I remember it very fondly, and it was I was there, so I remember that it was a lovely sunny day, and as you got closer to the stadium, you could feel the atmosphere, feel the excitement, and when you got in there, it was just like nothing I'd ever felt before. But SummerSlam will always live in my heart as well. So moving on, who would you say was your favourite wrestler of all time then, David?
I think it's no secret that anybody that looks at my timeline or knows anything about me, it's Shawn Michaels. A lot of people, you know, talk about how he is as a person and stuff like that, whether it, you know, he's kayfabe and the whole religion thing and all the rest of it. But, you know, you can't dispute the man. Even people who didn't like him and know he's a fantastic worker, you know. He could literally point at the opponent and get them to boo, and then point at himself and get them to cheer, you know. So he's just one of a kind for me. But yeah, I mean, I've got a lot of favourites now. I couldn't pinpoint anybody in particular, but Shawn Michaels has always been my boy.
Yeah. Now, I must admit, growing up, I couldn't quite click with Shawn Michaels. I was more of a Bret Hart fan, and
it's always one way or the other.
I think it was always one or the other, isn't it? It's like Star Trek or Star Wars, but yeah. So I mean, I don't know. Maybe it was his character. Maybe he was playing his character too well, and I just didn't like him as a heel. Maybe I just preferred baby faces as a youngster. But like I say, looking back on his body of work, and as I got older and appreciated heels more, as a lot of people do when they tend to get older as wrestling fans, I think I grew to like Shawn Michaels more. But definitely one of the best. And my favourite would be Ric Flair. So along similar veins, a typical heel. So definitely, it's the character that I enjoy. Like I say, Ric Flair, one of the greatest characters out there. So final question for you, so our wrestlers can get to know you a little bit better. What would you say was the best show you've ever been to? Would it be SummerSlam 92, or would it be something more recent?
No, probably you're putting this on the spot, because I go to, again, a lot of people know, I go to a lot of Rev Pro shows and things like that. I mean, there's probably, if I could like actually have the time to think about it longer, there's probably half a dozen. But I mean, one of the first Rev Pros I went to, and Shinsuke Nakamura was wrestling against Damo, and I actually got to meet Shinsuke, and I've never been more nervous in my life. I mean, I probably met about like 400 or 500 wrestlers, and you know, and of varying levels, from starting out right up to WWE superstars, and you know, this guy, he's standing there, and literally 2 yards away, I've got Hiroshi Tanahashi and Okada, so that didn't help with the nerves. And then I get there, and a lot of people know this story. Probably sick of hearing it by now from my friends. But I got there, and I was literally so nervous that when I got the 8x10 and the picture with him, I walked away without the 8x10. So I had Shinsuke Nakamura following us around the York Hall with me 8x10 for it. So just shows you what a nice fella he was. And he put the belt that he had on at the time in the IWGP Intercontinental, I think it was, on my shoulder, and I still love that picture. Isn't the best, graphically or whatever, but it's the memory, and just how nice he was. And I've been lucky enough that 99.9% of wrestlers I've met have always been nice and always very professional. So,
Excellent. Excellent. Lots of stories there, I'm sure. So let's have a look at the Royal Rumble. So what did you think of the Rumble overall then, David? Having kind of thought about it, it happened on Sunday, so a few days removed now. What did you think about it overall?
I think it's very hard. I mean, I'm sure you'll agree that anybody who sits and watches it from the outset to the end, it is a long haul. But, I mean, with watching it the next day and watching it in a couple of bites, I watched about half of it before work and then the rest of it afterwards. It was a lot more palatable, and I did, as I told you just before we came on air, I did skip one match, which was the Shane McMahon and Miz match. But, overall, I thought it flowed quite well. It seemed to go quite quick considering the length of it, and, a decent atmosphere. It's always a bit weird with acoustics with, a big arena like that. It's very hard to tell if people are fully into it, and I'm sure a lot of people were drained by about, 2-3 hours in, plus the pre-show and everything else. So, but I thought it was a really good, and what I liked most about it is it left you with the impression that there were, trying to push a few new faces as well, get a few names out there in the various Rumbles, but I'm sure we'll discuss that.
Absolutely. Lots of NXT talent showing up between the two Rumbles, and I can't wait to talk about them. So, it was described as the longest WWE pay-per-view in history, even longer than WrestleMania 34, and I was there. I know that was a long one, but so including the pre-show, and I think the main show went nearly 5 hours. I think people were sat there for close to 7 hours in total.
Oh my God!
But the reports I heard, and having watched it as well, was that it was an enjoyable show, and it flowed well, as you said.
Yeah.
And not only that, it didn't seem to last as long as the 7 hours would suggest on paper. Yeah. But because the matches were quite enjoyable, the Rumbles were enjoyable, and I think it had some good outcomes that may have been predictable in some senses, but definitely ones that we wanted. So we'll talk about that, and let's go to match number one. I'm not going to touch on the pre-shows, the pre-show matches. Asuka versus the Man, Becky Lynch. So, how has the hype regarding Becky Lynch, has that kind of caught your attention as well, David?
I love Becky, and it's nice to see the fact that she's getting pushed to the forefront finally. I mean, people talk about a work rate or whatever, but you don't always have to be the greatest worker in the world, innit? And and they do what they're allowed to do on TV and whatnot. We don't fully know what they're capable of all times, but Steve Austin didn't get over by having 5-star classic technical matches. He got by being the character that he was, and being able to stomp a mud hole in people, and I'm loving that. There's that element of that with Becky that people have, referred to the kind of like the anti-establishment. I'm going to go out and do my own thing and kick ass, and I don't care who says what. I'll do my own thing, and I like that. It's given a bit of creative freedom, and I'm all for that with any wrestler.
Absolutely, so. And I think the rise of Becky Lynch in the last 6 months, 8 months, you could say, has been a combination of how Daniel Bryan came to prominence, very much fan-driven, and also how Steve Austin came to prominence with his kind of anti-authority character. So it's a combination of the two in my eyes. But she had a reasonable match here, but she ended up on the losing side. The match went 22 minutes, and Asuka ended up winning the match. So there was quite a few key spots throughout the match. It did flow quite well. There was quite a few arm bars, and I know Asuka put on her Asuka lock on a few occasions, and she actually won via submission when she slapped on the Asuka lock, and actually kind of bridged, put an extra bit of torque into the move by bridging backwards. Cattle
mutilation, wasn't it? Almost.
That's right.
When she bridged forward, and a bit of a Daniel Bryan fan maybe But I think what I like, and I kind of put it in my notes here, but for a lot of the women's matches now, is they're becoming more like fights. You know, you always had back in the day, like when there were the divas, you had the hair pulling and the scratching and the choking on the ropes and that, and now it looks like two people actually, obviously we know about the predetermined blah blah blah, but you know, they look like they're not only laying it in, but they look like two people that are struggling to try and get the better of each other, you know, and I found that in the Ronda match too, but I'm sure we'll get to that as well.
And what I also liked about this, and this is obviously a little bit of confirmation that the company are back behind Asuka, 100%. Obviously, she won the title at TLC. She was an absolute killer in NXT, as we know. Came over to the WWE. She was made out to be, you know, still the killer to a certain degree, and then she went to WrestleMania. And then after a loss to Charlotte, it did kind of go downhill, especially with her feud with Carmella, which we don't want to talk about. But say certainly towards the back end of 2018, she did kind of redeem herself, did seem to get her mystique back again, and she's now kind of that killer Asuka again. And it was great to see her go over, you know, the most over person in WWE on Sunday nights, and a good win for Asuka, making her look very, very strong, hopefully going into WrestleMania as the SmackDown champion.
Definitely. I think the problem that people had when Asuka did eventually lose was not the fact that she lost, it was the way she lost. I mean, you know, she was this, as you said, a killer in NXT and a killer on the main roster for such a long time, and then to lose, where, you know, there wasn't really any build to that submission. There wasn't, oh, she's got a seriously bad leg and she can't put any weight on it, and there's been a couple of times where, you know, Charlotte's managed to slap on the figure four and the figure eight, and she's managed to get out of it. It was just so sudden that I think it just shocked a lot of people, and not in a good way, you know. It was like, well, what happened to the last 3 years of her being unstoppable? You know, it felt a bit selfish in the booking, if that's the right way of putting it. You know, if she'd lost and it was built to, I think people could have understood it a lot more. The suddenness of it, it was just almost, I'm sure people thought she was being punished or something like that, but you know, losing to a top person in a WrestleMania match isn't exactly being punished, or buried, as some people might say, but you know, but hopefully now, as you say, she's back on track and we'll get the Asuka revolt.
Well, absolutely. One thing that I find slightly ironic about Asuka is that it appeared that she wasn't getting pushed or getting the full support of Vince McMahon because she wasn't good at promos. You know, English is not her first language. But more recently, she's been doing promos in Japanese. She's shouting at her opponents in Japanese. So it sounds like Vince McMahon or the creative team has done a full 180 and are actually embracing the fact that she is, lo and behold, Japanese, and can actually, you know, show some real passion in her, you know, Japanese promo ability. So it's funny how it's turned around, but I think that's become a real positive to Asuka in the WWE at the moment. So good for her.
Totally agree.
Good. So I know you didn't watch this match, Shane McMahon and The Miz versus Sheamus and Cesaro. To be honest with you, you didn't miss too much. It was a fairly quick match.
Well, I'll be surprised.
But there were a few interesting spots there. So the Shane McMahon did his he did his coast to coast, but I think on one attempt he actually got caught in midair by Cesaro, and Cesaro did his giant swing. And Sheamus nailed his own partner Cesaro with a bro kick, and then Shane executed a tremendous shooting star press and pinned Sheamus for the 1-2-3. So off of a shooting star press, and that was the best move of the match. It was absolutely fantastic. So we got new tag team champions in The Miz and Shane McMahon. What are your thoughts?
I'm just wondering where we go from here, looking at the roster of SmackDown and who they're going to face next, and hopefully it's not just going to be another makeshift front together team, you know, somebody that maybe deserves it. I don't know if, you know, the likes of Gallows and Anderson are in any position yet, but maybe they can be rebuilt. We can only hope. But, you know, obviously the tag team division, there's been, you know, talk of them trying to revive it a bit, and you're always a bit hesitant when it comes to the tag team or cruiserweight divisions in WWE. You hear these things, and then it never comes to anything. We just keep holding on to false hope. I mean, NXT's proved that, you know, you can have interest in tag team wrestling that fans, you know, are invested in. You only have to look at TakeOver, you know, and the match that opened that. And I mean, Undisputed Era, I mean, for my money right now, are one of the best teams in the world. You know, it's like the unreal, and they bring tag team wrestling back, which is what made the revival so special in NXT, and hopefully can again if they decide to give it that push on Raw, you know. But I think my issue is with I mean, a lot of people's issue is the same thing, is that, yes, Shane's over, and yes, he does some nice high spots and things like that, and, you know, a lot of the stuff in between it can be a bit ropey, and, you know, and I can understand the nostalgia thing and whatnot, but to me, it's like, I'd prefer somebody else to be in that position, getting that shot. You know, he's a part-time, like, patch on, you know, a long-term problem, you know, so I think we need to start building those new stars, especially in the tag team division.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. And you know, bearing in mind that they've just won the SmackDown belts, what's happened to Sanity? You know, we've barely seen them on TV. They've been on the main roster since around WrestleMania time last year, so it's, you know, getting close to a year now. We've barely seen them on TV. You know, when are they going to get their chance? So it'll be maybe with Miz and Shane as a babyface combo. It might be an opportunity for lesser known teams such as Sanity to get involved to possibly challenge them. Maybe because maybe the Bar need a bit of a change of opponent as well. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Could the Shane and Miz combo be leading to a possible match between the two of them at WrestleMania? I think that's the rumor going around at the moment. But because, you know, somebody has to be the opponent for Shane. He has to have his WrestleMania moment, of course. So that'll be interesting to see who the two of them are up against.
I don't know about you, but I just don't feel Miz as a face at all. I know he's kind of like tweener and ride the fence at the moment, but it's like, you know, Miz always works better as a heel. I've never been a huge Miz fan, but, you know, I will say one thing about the guy, like, whether you like his wrestling or not, the character is the type of person that you really just want to punch right in the face, which is, so he's totally doing his job in that respect, you know? So.
Absolutely. No, he's definitely a much better heel. You know, probably only a few months ago there was talk of, you know, his rivalry with Daniel Bryan didn't really get off the ground when Daniel Bryan returned last year, but there was talk of maybe Daniel Bryan getting the championship, which he did eventually, and then facing the Miz at WrestleMania for the championship. But, you know, that's kind of fizzled out as well. So
it's probably due to the quality of the matches. They probably stalled on it.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving on to match number 3 of the Rumble, and it was for the Women's Championship match, the Raw Championship, Ronda Rousey versus Sasha Banks. So was you looking forward to this match going into it, David?
I was, you know. I mean, I like the fact that we seem to be, again, getting the Sasha revolt, just much like the story with Asuka. We seem to be getting the NXT Sasha back. You know, I really like the promo when, you know, she was talking about, you don't have to give me respect kind of thing. You know, I've already earned that respect. I'm a 4-time women's champion, and, you know, she didn't mention NXT, but, you know, and in this match, I felt like we got the wrestling Sasha revolt. You know, people knock her for, everybody makes mistakes, and then especially when you're doing dives and things like that, you know, everybody's going to make a mistake sooner or later, and people have been ragging on, you know, Sasha about this and that, but I think she's a great wrestler, and I think she proved it here, and I actually think, you know, Ronda's match here and with Bayley on Raw were her best 2 wrestling matches that she's had to date.
Yeah, you know? Definitely.
And again, going back, that scrappy style, the counters, you know, getting on the ropes with each other, like by the ropes, and, you know, snapping each other off, and they're struggling to get the arm bars, and she's kicking her when she's got her in a submission to try and kick her arm away so she can slap the submission. It's all good stuff. It looks like a struggle. It looks like an athletic contest. You know, it's not a diva slap fight.
This one was definitely a fight, and definitely one of Sasha Banks' best matches in a long time. And we think fondly back to her match with Bayley at TakeOver Brooklyn 1 from 2015, and that was an absolute fantastic match. And she's had some good matches with Charlotte on Raw in the past, but this is probably her best match since that series with Charlotte, and certainly since that match with Bayley on NXT. But to just a few key spots that came out through the match, there was one moment where Sasha Banks went diving through the ropes, and she was caught by Ronda Rousey, and let's see, so Banks actually tapped out, but on the outside of the ring.
Floor, and Ronda was like signaling it, like as if, this means I've won, as if she didn't quite still fully get the rules of
exactly, nothing could be done. So, and then Banks manages to apply a bank statement on Rousey in the middle of the ring, but Banks comes out the winner in the end with a Piper's Pit. So you don't often see Ronda Rousey winning by pinfall. It's normally by submission, normally by armbar.
I would like to butt in and say Sasha did a fantastic counter the first time that she tried the Piper's Pit, and it was almost like a crossbody, like power slam almost maneuver, like where she had to counter out of it, and I thought that looked really good. The 2 little gripes that annoyed me about that match. One's got nothing to do with the match. It's this obsession with showing every single, and I know that's in multi-languages and stuff like that, but showing every single announcer every single time. It drives me up the wall. And the other thing is Ronda Rousey's gear. She seriously needs to get some gear that she doesn't spend half the match adjusting, because it does distract you away from the match. It starts to annoy me after a while.
Very true.
Like, seriously, get some gear that fits. I'm sure you can afford it.
Yeah. So all in all, I thought it was a good match, and I actually thought it was better than the Becky Asuka match, definitely up there as one of the matches of the night as far as I'm concerned. But Ronda won by pinfall, and then at the end, the tour on the outside, and Banks throws Ronda a little bit of shade by putting up the horsewomen sign. Now this has been rumbling under the surface for many years. Will the MMA 4 horsewomen face the WWE 4 horsewomen? Will it get together? Will it even be a possibility? Will it be any good as a match? But do you think it's likely to happen, David?
Well, I mean, we hear from the scuttlebutt that it's not going to happen, but how many times WWE throws that type of false information out, and then we find 3 months later, they are going ahead with it. My only stumbling block with that would be, the experience level of Jessamine Duke and Mia Shafir. Obviously they're still down in NXT. They're still very green. They're learning. But I mean, Ronda was in that same spot last year, and with a competent opponent, and the WWE horsewomen are competent opponents. Maybe they can hide the shortcomings, and you often find at WrestleMania, you look at a match on paper and you go, oh my God, it's this versus that, and you go, this is going to be an absolute train wreck, and then you get something a bit special, so we can only hope for that if it does come to pass.
So just one final thing on the Ronda Rousey-Sasha Banks match. Where does this leave Sasha now that she's lost to Ronda Rousey? Is she going to be kept strong to possibly have a rematch?
I'm hoping a heel turn, because we've all been. I mean, Sasha again is another character that works better. I mean, the whole boss thing lends itself to arrogance and being a heel. So and I think she thrives better in that. When she's being bitchy. Yeah. So I'd like to see that, but I don't know what that sets up opponent-wise, and maybe it's going to be her and Bayley, because she turned her back on her or whatever to start with. But and I don't. I mean, in NXT. Fantastic match, but Bayley and Sasha are on Raw. It seems that they're holding back. I don't know if that's the producers or whatever, but it's just like a lot of people. It doesn't seem the same animal from NXT to the main roster. But we can only hope for the best.
Yeah, I mean, me personally, I think that Banks and Bayley will probably be the first WWE Women's Tag Team Champions, or they'll certainly be in contendership, and then we'll probably see a bit of a split and maybe an eventual match between the two of them. But
as long as it's not Nia and Tamina.
Exactly. So hopefully there's bigger and better things down the line for Sasha Banks after a bit of a wobbly year or so. So moving on to the Women's Royal Rumble. Now, I thought that this was an excellent Royal Rumble. It started off with Lacey Evans and Natalya. So I like Lacey as well. I wasn't a fan of her on NXT, but I did start to warm to her, to be honest with her, on NXT. But I think that she's the perfect character for the WWE product. She's got the character, she's got the gimmick, she's got the annoying southern drawl, and she's actually not too. She's fairly handy in the ring as well. There was one or two spots where she tried to kip up and slipped over, but I think besides that she held her own, and I think she looked pretty good in this Rumble. How do you think that Lacey fared?
I think, as you said, I knew she was like a decent wrestler. I mean, obviously she's training people in the performance center and things like that. She's involved in that as well. Right. So, so she's obviously got the mechanics there, but I could never quite take to the character. But it's like, they couldn't decide if it was Army, they couldn't decide if it was Southern Belle, but the position of it, you're a bit worried when all of these ones come up from NXT, where they're going to be, how they're going to use them, and to put somebody in that number one spot in the Royal Rumble and not only let them wrestle a match, but let them have a promo and then let them look competitive against like top stars like Charlotte. I mean, she held her own, like she's given as good as she's getting with Charlotte at some points. Normally Charlotte will come in with somebody new like that and just, I'm Charlotte, so you've got to bow down kind of thing. And it was nice to see that a lot of the NXT girls got to be competitive and not just had to pay their dues, So.
Definitely. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rattle through some of the key entrants, and I'm going to cover off in a bit more detail some of the NXT girls that appeared in this Rumble. So obviously Lacey Evans and Natalya started off. Then Billie Kay was at number 7. Now she wasn't getting in the ring for love nor money until Peyton Royce turned up, and then Peyton Royce did turn up, but I think Billie Kay kind of got flattened by Nikki Cross on the rampway, so Billie Kay ended up in the ring sooner than she was hoping. So Nikki Cross came in at number 8 and then took out everybody with a flying crossbody. We had Charlotte Flair in at number 13. So I think when she came in, business really started to pick up, to be honest with you. Things started to get a little bit more serious and a lot more fun. Then some NXT entrants. So number 14 we had Kairi Sane, who
got a huge pop.
She got a fabulous pop, yeah, absolutely. And I shouldn't sound surprised at that, to be honest with you, but I know that she's one of the favourite characters in NXT, but I don't know whether her character has properly clicked until very recently with the NXT and maybe the WWE audience. So maybe it's just starting to kind of catch fire now, to be honest with you. But I'm really enjoying her kind of makeshift tag team with Io Shirai, and I've seen them on TV over the last few weeks, and they're really clicking. So we'll talk more about that combo a bit later on. But I don't know whether that's having a bit of a positive effect on her individually, but she did get a great response at number 14. At number 16 we had Naomi. Now Naomi, I think she eliminated Mandy Rose, and then Mandy Rose kind of pulled her off the apron or kind of eliminated her.
And female Kofi Kingston.
That's right, and she managed to get herself up onto the barrier at ringside, walk all the way around. There was a little stumble there, but then she did this huge leap from the barrier to the ring steps, and then I think she got pulled off the ring steps by Mandy Rose, so she was eliminated. But that was very impressive, and you can always expect Naomi to pull off an exciting.
And she's another one as well that, people can be, she's scrappy, she's this, she's that, but I think she delivers more often than she messes up, and while we're talking about huge pops, I mean, poor Kacy Catanzaro got cricket tonight. Nobody knew who she was, but by the end of that match they certainly knew who she was.
They really did. So Candice LeRae came in at number 17 and Kacy Catanzaro at number 19. So Kacy Catanzaro, she's shorter than I am. She's less. She's not even 5 foot, poor girl. But she is like a little spider monkey. I mean, I think she got nearly eliminated at one point. She managed to keep her feet off the ground by sitting on the outside, and then she crawled up the ring post and back into the ring. She did She actually walked to the ring on her hands, didn't she? And then back up the ring post. Well, it was incredible.
Yeah, if you think back to the Mae Young Classic this year, she did a similar thing just to enter the ring. She basically like climbed up it like she was climbing rocks, But it's crazy for somebody in just their first year in wrestling. And I don't think it's any secret. A lot of people that read the sheets and whatnot know that her and Ricochet are involved. So she's only with somebody like that in your ear. You're only going to get more fantastic in the ring. And I could see in 2-3 years if WWE don't get impatient like they do with a lot of talented people, then she could be one to keep an eye on, because she certainly got the athleticism.
Absolutely. I've actually heard from 1 or 2 reports that she might be going straight up to the main roster. She might bypass NXT altogether. So that could be an interesting one. I think that she's very high on a lot of people's radars, kind of in the back office.
But is it too much too soon?
Maybe.
You've got to be careful, Maybe.
I mean, she's a ninja warrior after all, though, David. So, they like all that. So, number 23, we had Io Shirai, and Io Shirai didn't even make it into the ring before she's moonsaulting off of the top turnbuckle onto the Riot Squad on the outside, and I thought that was an amazing spot. And although some of her moonsaults in the Mae Young Classic were a little bit off the mark, she's been absolutely fantastic since, especially when she's been helping Kairi Sane in a battle against the Horsewoman Shayna Baszler. That moonsault she did then. I think they've got more comfortable because they've got somebody that they can bounce off, or they'll just be around backstage, maybe having that extra person that they can speak to in their home tongue and just relax a little bit more. And so I mean, she probably didn't have many friends when she come in, and hopefully that's going to lend her to relaxing a little bit more in the ring. Yeah, she looks very comfortable. So number 24 we had Rhea Ripley. Now when I first saw Rhea Ripley in the 2017 Mae Young Classic, Didn't really kind of click, but then she's come back with this heel persona, and I think she's an absolute revelation, and she deserved to win the NXT UK Championship, although if you read the spoilers, you might have been a bit surprised by why was she in the tournament to start off with, but then she made a very credible champion, and I think she's got a really bright future ahead of her. What do you think of Rhea Ripley?
I definitely think she's grown into the role. I mean, I'm sure we'll get the NXT UK this week, but the promos are picking up, the characters picking up. It just adds a little bit more variety to the moveset and gets those moves over. I mean, obviously we know about the Riptide, but when she does that standing cloverleaf, if maybe we get a few people tapping out of that, then people would see it as a dangerous move, because obviously right now in these early days, people are going, oh well, people aren't going to tap out of that because nobody, we get educated into knowing what's a finisher and what's a match ender, and but she's got the size, she's got the look, she's got the youth. She's got the promos will improve, and with the help. I mean, you've got Shawn Michaels and Triple H and a handful of others in the performance center. You can't help but improve, And I think I watched a little thing about the performance center, sort of behind the scenes, and the girls at the Royal Rumble, and their reaction to being in it and all that. And you could see the sort of camaraderie between even the likes of Io Shirai and Rhea Ripley and all that. NXT is the brand, and we want to show that we're a brand apart. We're not a developmental. We're our own brand, and we deserve to be recognised for that. So.
Absolutely. And speaking of Casey Catanzaro, when Rhea Ripley got in there was this wonderful spot between the two of them where Casey was kind of flying all around the body of Ripley, ending up kind of giving her a DDT. And I know that they used that spot when they faced each other in the Mae Young Classic in 2018. But maybe that could be a little bit of a rivalry similar to maybe a Rey Mysterio and an Andrade. Somebody smaller that can bounce around and fly around, somebody stronger that can help make that happen. But I thought that was really good. So number 26, we had Alexa Bliss, and an absolutely huge pop for Alexa Bliss. I know that it was announced earlier on in the week that she was going to be in the Rumble, but I think she must have been really touched by the ovation that she got. And welcome back, Alexa Bliss.
And another very divisive character, because I love Alexa Bliss. I've loved her even when she was the little fairy character on NXT and all that, and I could see the potential there and the athleticism there. And you get people saying she can't wrestle. She does what she needs to do, but a character is there to get under your skin, and I'm so pretty, I'm so much better than you, and everything else. So she doesn't need to be a technical marvel or anything like that. She does exactly what she needs to do.
Absolutely. So Bayley came out 27. Lana came out 28. Well, she kind of came out. She was struggling from an injury that was caused when Rusev knocked into her and took her off the ring apron during the pre-show match against Shinsuke Nakamura. And then out come Nia Jax 29 and just leveled Lana, beating her down, attacking her injured leg, throwing her into the barrier. That pretty much put an end to Nia Jax. Carmella came out 30, as we were expecting. Once all the officials were around Lana, you had Finlay there as well. And then the man came out. The man, Becky Lynch, came out and said, look, I want to take her place. She's not going anywhere. You've only got 29 people in there. I want to be that extra person. I want to take Lana's place. And after a bit of persuading, Finlay says, go get them. And the crowd the place just erupted, knowing that Becky Lynch was not going to have that year that Daniel Bryan had when everybody was expecting him to be in there and was let down. They weren't let down on this occasion, and Becky Lynch went in there. And what did you think? Did it take you by surprise? Was you expecting that?
I was expecting Becky to turn up at some point. I didn't know exactly where they were going to slot her in, but I think the only problem I had with, you see, this is just me being old and pessimistic, but it's when it got you've got Charlotte in there and you've got Nia in there, there was no sort of anybody that was, Charlotte had been in there a fair while and stuff like that, but you didn't feel like it was a huge win, because she's coming, obviously she's taking the place of somebody else in there, in storyline, and it was all good, but it was just I felt like it needed to feel more important, she'd overcome the odds or something like that. Just being slotted in like that just seemed a bit of a backdoor way of getting it done. But it is what it is, and now we've got we're looking forward to Ronda versus Becky, so it's win-win.
We are indeed. So then the final four was Nia Jax, Bayley, Charlotte, and Becky Lynch. Bayley gets eliminated, Nia Jax gets eliminated by Becky Lynch, and then Nia shoves Becky Lynch off of the ring steps. Becky lands awkwardly, she injures her left knee, so then it's left between Becky Lynch with this leg injury and Charlotte, and eventually Charlotte gets eliminated. Becky Lynch is the Royal Rumble winner. So like I say, it was slightly written in the wind, so to speak. We kind of knew that something like this was going to happen.
But that's sometimes good, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not. You don't always have to be surprised. Sometimes the obvious answer is the right one, But my only issue, and again, this is personal for myself, and I know there's a few other fans that feel the same way, especially on my group. Cheap pop. But Nia Jax, I feel, was one of these that was brought up maybe when she wasn't quite ready. I do have issues with bumping and selling and stuff like that, but she's in the. It's the Ronda Rousey thing all over again. You can't just turn around to Vince and go, I don't want that push, or I don't want that opportunity. But I do feel like she's being shoved out. People talk about Charlotte and she gets the opportunities because she's Ric Flair's daughter and whatnot. And but Charlotte's got the skills. Charlotte, did a time in the Performance Center and she did a time on NXT, and she very, very quickly got very, very good. Whereas Nia, I feel, has got there. I mean, people could say because it's The Rock, whether or not that's true or not, but I feel that she's not quite the finished article. She could be the killer heel. People think Karma and stuff like that, and there's obviously comparisons to the bigger girls, the big killers and stuff like that. But one, I don't feel she fits the killer package 100%, and I think she has real issues with bumping and selling. I mean, when she bumps out the ring, she basically walks out and holds the ropes. She can't sell to save her life. You should look like you're in trouble, not sell it for 2 seconds and then be adjusting your hair. That was the best part. As I said, going back to the women's matches, people looked in trouble. People were begging for those ropes. Shawn Michaels always used to say, when you get those ropes, it should be like it's saving. I'm not sure if it was Shawn or Kurt, but they said, when you get those ropes, it should be like it's saving your life. That should be the most important thing ever. And Nia forgets this. I mean, even when you look at last week's takeover, you got somebody as inexperienced as Bianca Belair, who hasn't even been in the business for 2 years, wrestling. And she remembered all the way through that match when she had that sore arm, that sore arm fed into everything, whether you were doing a body slam or climbing the top rope or whatever. She remembered to sell. And that's my issue with Nia. It's like, I don't need to do this because I'm in this spot and I don't need to make the effort, So.
Yeah, so speaking of Nia Jax, that's not the last we've seen her in this Royal Rumble, so we'll get to talk about her a bit more. So I've got a controversial question for you then, David. So does the main event, so we know that Ronda Rousey and Becky Lynch are likely to main event WrestleMania, so does the main event of Ronda Rousey and Becky Lynch, do they need Charlotte Flair in that match also to turn it into a must-see, first-class main event spot? Does it need a Charlotte in there to turn it into a true main event for WrestleMania?
Asking for my personal standpoint, I'd say no. I'm bored with this triple threat thing at WrestleMania, and the way WWE handles triple threats, it's like a bit backwards anyway, because it soon gets old when you're doing this. Somebody's going for a pin or a submission, and the other one's breaking it up, and then somebody's spending 5 minutes on the floor. I'd prefer they did it the elimination way if they're going to do it that way. Somebody gets pinned, and then it's the last two left. That makes a lot more sense. That's a lot easier to watch, but looking at the improvement in Ronda and looking, the storyline, we've got the build, we've got the attacks, and getting her on Raw, and saying I left you laying in this ring and all that. The chemistry's there. I just think people feel it's going to make people again feel that Charlotte's so entitled that she's just getting inserted into this, and it's not necessary. Yeah, I mean, I'm just sitting here watching SmackDown a short time ago, and it was exciting, and it's kind of interesting when Becky just drops Charlotte. But we've been down this road before. I'd like to see what Ronda Rousey and Becky can do on their own.
Yeah, Very good, very good. So then we go on to the match that I didn't pay a great amount of attention to, and it's Daniel Bryan versus AJ Styles. So I know that the match goes 25 minutes, and they did have to follow that fantastic Royal Rumble match and that fantastic ending. I mean, I'm just going to cover off the last few minutes, and to the surprise of everybody in that stadium and everybody at home, Eric Rowan made a return, dressed in flannel, and he's got his first name back as well. And it appears that he's aligning with Daniel Bryan Bryan, and he actually becomes involved in the end of the match. So Daniel Bryan goes to hit AJ Styles with an enziguri, accidentally catches the ref. While the ref is down, AJ Styles attempts to hit a Styles clash on Daniel Bryan, which he does connect, but the referee's still down, so he can't make the count. Eric Rowan comes into the ring, choke slams AJ Styles. The referee, yeah, well, he grabs him. That's it. It's a unique style, isn't it? He does grab him by the face. You're quite right. And then Bryan, the referee comes to. Bryan covers. The referee counts to 3. Daniel Bryan is still the SmackDown World Champion. What's your thoughts on the match? Thoughts on Eric Rowan?
I think it had weird positioning because obviously, again, we speak to the length of the events and stuff like that. But these are two like wrestlers that any other time we'd love to watch and stuff like that. But I felt sorry for the crowd because obviously they're sitting there like probably 5 hours in or whatever it was now. Yeah. And you're giving them a technical match, which is always a slow burner, and you're always going to build the submissions and the holds and what have you. So that was odd position. Maybe that should have happened earlier on the card, somewhere between the women's matches and stuff. But it was still a great match for people, and it was still interesting. But it took a while to get where it was going, which was hard for the people in attendance, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. So we move on to Finn Balor versus Brock Lesnar for the Universal Championship. So this was a really good match. I think we knew we were going to get a good match out of these two. It only went 8 minutes, but Finn Balor had quite a lot of the offense, and the story of the match was essentially Finn Balor attacked Brock Lesnar by running him into, or allowing Brock to run into the announcer's desk stomach first. And of course, he had this diverticulitis a few years ago, and they were kind of playing off of that storyline. And it meant that whenever Brock was trying to dominate Finn Balor, to throw him into a suplex or an F5, he was kind of too injured from his stomach injury to pull off some of the moves, giving Finn the upper hand. Now, Finn Balor, he hit 3 successive topes over the top rope to the outside on Lesnar, and just before the end of the match, Balor hit his coup de grace on Lesnar. He covered. Lesnar kicked out on the 2 count. And then immediately applied his Kimura lock, and that's it. The Beast retained his championship. But for a minute there, he looked in trouble, and for a minute there, people were thinking, could Balor pull it off? What were your thoughts on the match?
I really enjoyed the match. It was quite fast-paced and it wasn't the typical, somebody getting suplexed all over the place, for 5 minutes and then, F5 end of. But, it was nice to see, Lesnar looking vulnerable for once after he, hit the corner of that table and whatnot. Yeah. But yeah, I think what everybody wanted was about another 5 minutes. But you know what we've come to expect with Brock Lesnar matches. It's a short and intense match. But it did. I mean, Balor's been kind of treading water on Raw for a long time, and people have said heel turns. And personally, I would have liked to see him and his Balor Club turn heel on DX on the 25th anniversary. Yeah. I thought that would have been an ideal time with the most eyes watching and whatnot. But anyway, it is what it is, and Balor did his thing for a while, and it was just there kind of thing, having good matches, but not really, having any traction. But I thought this kind of reignited him and showed that, he can be a threat, and used right, he is a potential, near top level, if not top level player. So I really enjoyed it, but another 5 minutes would have been nice. But I still enjoyed what I saw. So.
Absolutely, couldn't agree anymore. And I'm intrigued to see what happens next with Finn Balor. Is his push going to remain? Is he going to get another shot of the Beast, possibly next time as the Demon? That could be quite interesting. I mean, there's a couple of pay-per-views between now and WrestleMania. I don't know if the Beast or Brock Lesnar is contracted to work on any of them shows. I know we got Elimination Chamber and then Fastlane prior to WrestleMania.
A pessimist would say he was only being pushed because there was rumblings about him, jumping ship to AEW. But apparently Lesnar requested that he wrestled against Balor. So it speaks to his opinion of him, and hopefully it might change Vince's viewpoint on him. Not every small guy is a mid-carder.
No. So I'd like to see Finn Balor in a more prominent position with the company sometime soon. But that was a good match, and one that we can look back on fondly. Going on to the men's Royal Rumble. Now, I'm not going to cover every single entrant. I'm going to cover some of the more interesting entrances, and like I say, because this is predominantly an NXT podcast, Johnny Gargano came out at number 6, and he hit quite a nice slingshot spear through the ropes onto Elias, which I thought was pretty good. Mustafa Ali came out at 13, and that was a good one, and he eliminated Shinsuke Nakamura. Drew McIntyre came out at 16, and he beat up the entire conga line, which was probably the highlight of the match for me. Pete Dunne came out at 18, and I was hoping and praying that Pete Dunne would be part of the Rumble, and he was, and he put in a really good showing. And you kind of look at Pete Dunne in the Rumble, and all that, you kind of start fantasy booking. Oh, could he have a match with Drew? Could he have a match with Andrade?
That's exactly what I was
unbelievable.
doing. I was sitting there going, oh, Mustafa Ali and this one, and Pete Dunne, and oh yeah, and I like the little spot as well where he snapped Aleister Black's fingers, and Aleister Black being Aleister Black, of course, snapped them back, because he's Aleister Black.
Oh yeah.
But there was so much like good stuff going on there, and people were saying, oh, I would have preferred the be all the nostalgia ones in there and stuff like that. But to me, I thought it was far more exciting having the NXT guys in there, and it also kind of give you a hint at maybe where they're going. I mean, for Mustafa Ali to eliminate Shinsuke, and whether you see, Shinsuke was top of the card at, this time last year, and now he's got a pre-show, and for him to do that speaks to how they feel about Mustafa Ali going forward, and he's an exciting character for the kids. He's an exciting character for the purists and the ones that want to see the flips and what have you. So it's good, it makes you start to think hopefully that WWE's going somewhere, because you sit for every interminable Raw and you're like, oh my god, I feel like it's rinse and repeat and I'm watching the same stuff in a different order and stuff like that. But when you get something like Mustafa Ali or another young one, whether it's Pete Dunne or whoever, it makes you feel like, oh well, maybe they are going somewhere, So.
No, definitely. And you mentioned Aleister Black. He came out at 21. Jeff Hardy came out at 24. Rey Mysterio 25. Bobby Lashley 26.
Did Rey Mysterio just jump into a lake of rejuvenation or something like that? Because since he's got this weight, he's just I don't know. I haven't got the words, to be honest.
No, I mean it's like it's like he's wrestling a match of his from 20 years ago, or maybe longer than that. He is he must be in his mid 40s now.
He's 44,
yeah.
and people were talking about the Almas matches, where in the same vein as they were talking about Eddie Guerrero in '97. Halloween Havoc. So it's amazing that somebody that's had as many knee surgeries. I think he's had 7 or something like that, knee surgeries, and I saw him in Rev Pro a year or so before against Marty Scurll, and it was, and I'm expecting a bog standard Rey Mysterio match, and he just turned back the clock. It was amazing, He's
superhuman.
Yeah.
There was a really impressive spot in the match where there was this Tower of Doom move involving Rey Mysterio, Mustafa Ali, Andrade, and Strowman, and I think Strowman was probably holding about 3 or 4 people up on this move, and that was just an absolutely outstanding move, probably the best Tower of Doom move I've ever seen.
And then Andrade holding them up in that vertical suplex for a good while as well. So
absolutely.
That looked amazing.
Really good. And then R-Truth came out at 30. He didn't last long because he got beaten up on the outside by Nia Jax. He doesn't. What's up, R-Truth? He's not doing it for him. But Nia Jax came out in his place. So once again, we see another female competitor in the men's Rumble. What sort of impact do you think she had on the Rumble this year? I mean, she had a bit of a face-off with Randy Orton, but then in the end, she did get eliminated after a super kick from Dolph Ziggler, a 619 from Rey Mysterio, then an RKO from Randy Orton. So do you think it did what it was meant to have done, having Nia Jax in there?
I'm going to say a positive thing about Nia Jax. You might want to hold your breath for this one, but it's that was actually, that segment of the Royal Rumble was actually exciting. And now a lot of time you've got the last 4 in the Rumble, and you can pretty much pick 1 or 2 who are going to win. If Dolph Ziggler's out there with Randy Orton and Roman Reigns, and you pretty much know it's not Dolph Ziggler that's going to be winning. So you had that mystery and what's going on and who's going to win now, and it was exciting for the time that it lasted. I felt sorry for R-Truth, because R-Truth this year, I mean, people can say, oh, he's a joke and he's comedy and this, that, and the other, but he's another one that's had a bit of a career resurgence just this year. While he's entertaining and funny in the ring for a 48-year-old guy or whatever he is now, he's still amazing, which I felt a bit sorry from this week, because I'd heard about the US title change and whatnot, and I looked at it, and they just made it look like a complete fluke, and I'm thinking, do they not have any confidence in him wrestling a match, because he is capable, so it was a shame, but it is what it is. But it put Nia in a position of being the badass as usual, which, whether you like that or not, but it kept things exciting, and that's the point, really, at the end of the day.
It did, and it all came down to Braun Strowman and Seth Rollins as the last two. Both of the competitors ended up on the ring apron, and after a bit of to-and fro-in, Rollins executed a curb stomp on Strowman. Strowman went out to the floor, and Seth Rollins was your men's Royal Rumble winner for 2019.
Are you happy with that?
Yeah, definitely. I must admit, though, I think that WWE have really missed the boat on Seth Rollins on a couple of occasions. There was a time when he went out with his injury in 2015. He came back in 2016. They did this WWE Network exclusive documentary on him, kind of promoting him as a babyface. Everybody wanted him to come back as a babyface, and he came back as a heel. So that kind of put a little bit of water on that fire. And then, like I say, earlier on this year, he was kind of red hot. He won that.
Having amazing matches every week on Raw.
That gauntlet match that went over an hour. Absolutely, so that gauntlet match. And then over WrestleMania weekend, he won the Intercontinental Championship the following night on Raw. And I was in New Orleans, and I witnessed it myself. He was the man. He was so over at WrestleMania and on Raw the following night. But the WWE seemed to be too interested in pushing Roman Reigns. Now Roman Reigns is out, and you've got Seth Rollins there as the kind of filler, and he is kind of worthy of his spot, most definitely. But I just feel that he's not quite there. He's not quite clicking with me as he should be going into WrestleMania. So maybe, hopefully, they'll reheat him ahead of WrestleMania. But they've got a little bit of work to do to get him back to where he was. Last year.
They should have maybe pulled the trigger on him when he was white hot, as you said, when he was killing all those matches on Raw, and didn't matter who the opponent was, he was right there. My other issue is they seem to have kind of scaled back a bit on Braun, and it's as if they're a bit hesitant to go with him in any real way. You had him in the position for Brock Lesnar, and then he was pulled out of that, and then obviously didn't win the Royal Rumble, but it was Seth's night and all that. So you wonder if Vince is having a bit of trepidation with him, and sort of because obviously he's still a big green, but again, as we spoke about before, you don't have to be a technical marvel always to succeed. So we'll have to see where we'll go with Braun, and I think the flipping and flopping, I hope they don't big show him and, basically have him flipping and flopping from heel to face too many times, because that can take the heat off as much as anything else.
Definitely. I still say that Braun Strowman's best feud was with Roman Reigns, and I thought that some of the matches they had and the feud they had was very good.
That guy that can't wrestle.
Well, this is it. But
according to some people, I love Roman. I don't care what anybody says. That guy, it takes two to tango, as I say, and unless you're John Cena. Roman Reigns, and good luck anybody booing him if he comes back from what he's got at the moment, and best of luck to him. But the Daniel Bryan match, and he just keeps having good matches, and even with people that you wouldn't expect necessarily for him to do, these people who say he can't wrestle, they're just simply not paying attention, are they?
Finishing Move Limited, specialising in simple, stylish and versatile items to elevate your everyday. Check out their Instagram at Finishing Move Limited and find their elevated essentials range at finishingmovelimited.com.
So let's move on to NXT. I think we'll agree that we can kind of put a bow on Royal Rumble, and I think we'll both agree that it was a really good show. But moving on to NXT. So the start of this week's NXT shows highlights from Saturday's TakeOver Phoenix show, which we're both a big fan of, I'm sure. And it was a very superb show. You can hear all about NXT TakeOver Phoenix in my review that I did with my wrestling buddy Matt Bayliss on Wrestling with Johners from Monday. The matches that David and I are going to be reviewing tonight are from the pre-show from Saturday's TakeOver. So the first match that they saw before the main card on Saturday was Io Shirai and Kairi Sane versus Jessamine Duke and Marina Shafir. So what was your thoughts going into this match, and what did you think of it overall?
I thought, given the limitations of the opposition, again, something we discussed earlier, that it was a really good match. I mean, obviously you've got top competition with Io and Kairi, but they didn't look completely out of the depth that people were saying they couldn't work and whatnot, but they did the technical, sort of MMA style, and they're all going to evolve. They're still very early in their career, so you can't be too harsh on them. And the crowd seemed to enjoy it. I certainly enjoyed it, so I didn't see any problem with it really.
Yeah, and it looks like the WWE officials are getting serious about Io Shirai and Kairi Sane being a tag team, because they've given them a tag team name now. They're now called the Sky Pirates. I don't know if you noticed that. It makes you wonder whether they've got thoughts on maybe bringing them into the main roster to be part of the women's tag team division, but even so, they've got a tag team name now, and I thought it was a fairly good match for what it was. The match only went 8 minutes. There was a lot of ground holes and a lot of groundwork from Duke and Shafir, as you would expect. And then as soon as Kairi Sane got tagged in, the hot tag, of course, she was flying all over the place. Some really good moves. The end of the match happened when, let's have a look. So Kairi Sane managed to get the pinfall victory after her insane elbow. But one spot in particular that I liked before that was their kind of assisted pop-up elbow drop where Shirai kind of launches Sane up into the air, and she comes down, crashes down onto her opponent with a solid elbow drop. So that's kind of quite a good combo. But Kairi Sane did manage to win the match with the insane elbow after 8 minutes.
Sky Pirates sounds like a license to print money for the kids as well. That's a hat and a lunchbox and everything else in between, isn't it?
It really is. So that was a fun match, but I haven't seen Duke and Shafir win a match so far since they've been on NXT. Certainly not on TV anyway. I know that they lost to Sane and Shirai in their debut match on NXT TV a few weeks back. But I can't understand kind of the logic behind them kind of losing 2 matches like this. Hopefully they'll get some wins in the future, and I think they do show a lot of promise. But I'm pleased that Io Shirai and Kairi Sane won the match here. So yeah, a good fun match to open the show.
I enjoyed it, definitely.
Good.
Yeah, hopefully more good things coming from the Sky Pirates.
Yep.
Onwards and upwards.
Yep, so then we see a backstage interview with Johnny Gargano after his win at TakeOver Phoenix. He said that Johnny Takeover wins, and Johnny Takeover is the new NXT North American champion, and that winning feels great. And then we get and then we get a backstage interview with Bianca Belair after her loss to Shayna Baszler at TakeOver, and she said that the title was literally in her fingertips, and that she will take away the title from Shayna Baszler. She then goes on to tell Sam Roberts to kiss her ass. I think there was something on the pre-show that he said.
I don't know what that was really all about. I don't know where it's leading storyline-wise, where she basically said she wasn't a competent opponent for her. Well, I really thought she was, but given our experience level, I thought it was a really good match, and I really enjoyed it. So
I did as well. And she was actually, I think, my favourite wrestler coming out of TakeOver Phoenix for the way that she, she told the story of the injury, her arm injury. Yep.
Before that, she obviously had that bit of arrogance which had turned a few fans off, the way you couldn't doubt her, ability in the ring and the athleticism especially. But, that storyline, and again, it made a few people turn off it after seeing all of the high spots and everything of Ricochet and Gargano and that. But this was a storytelling match. It wasn't about spots and flips and stuff like that. This was about, the determination of Bianca to win versus the desperation almost of Shayna to hold on to it, even using the horsewomen and every other trick in the book to hold on to it. And I don't care what people say about her physical appearance, or she looks like Baron Corbin, some people say, and stuff like that, but she is a killer, and she's like an old school heel. She doesn't care if you like her, hate her, or anywhere in between. She's going to get the job done, whether it looks pretty and ties a nice little knot on it or whatever. But she is fantastic at what she does, and I hope she succeeds if and when she makes it the main roster as well, which I'm sure she will.
I think she'll go up to the main roster sooner rather than later, and I think she's going to do really well there. Then we get a backstage interview with Matt Riddle, and he says that he broke Cassius Ohno and that he would break anyone who he faces in the future. So a bit more character development there for Matt Riddle. Then we see some backstage footage of the brawl that happened after TakeOver, went off there last Saturday night.
Fight.
That's right. So the 6 men was Aleister Black, Velveteen Dream, Ricochet, Tommaso Ciampa, Johnny Gargano, and Adam Cole, and they're going to be competing in a 6-man tag match this coming Sunday as a halftime heat during the Super Bowl halftime, and that will be on the WWE Network, Facebook, YouTube. Like I say, at halftime during the Super Bowl. So
be tuning in for that one.
That should be a good one, definitely. And then there's a little promo for the Worlds Collide special, which airs on the WWE Network this coming Saturday, where we'll see 5 wrestlers from NXT, 5 wrestlers from NXT UK, and 5 wrestlers from 205 Live going up against one another, where the winner of this tournament will have an opportunity to face a champion of their choosing. I think, looks like you may have read the spoilers, but there's been some developments regarding that over the last day or so, but I'm not going to kind of spoil anything here. You'll hear about that on future NXT episodes in the future. And then we get kind of the main event of the show, the Street Profits versus the Forgotten Sons. So I was not looking forward to this match going into it, but it actually ended up being a tidy little match, and I was very impressed with the Street Profits. I'm a big fan of Montez Ford, but Angelo Dawkins actually showed me something in this match where he showed a bit of emotion, a bit of character. He showed some of his power moves, but in the end, Steve Cutler and Wesley Blake from the Forgotten Sons actually came away with a win. What did you think?
I really enjoy it, and as you said, I mean, Montez Ford, I keep looking at him, and as much as I like Angelo Dawkins, you look at Montez Ford and you think future, single star, much like Bianca Belair, like his other half.
Yep.
And, he's fantastic, he's got charisma, he's got that connection with the fans, and, he's highly athletic, and, I almost feel sorry, because there's nothing wrong with Angelo Dawkins, but, and back in the day, he was supposed to be going to be in a sort of shoot fighting team with, and it was going to be Chad Gable and all that, and it never made it to TV, unfortunately, but because I thought that would have been quite interesting, but, the Street Profits have developed from almost the comedy bushwhackers of NXT that nobody takes seriously to a competent tag team, and you could honestly see them going for the NXT tag belts at one time or another. But Montez Ford is definitely the one to watch and the star of the future if they don't mess it up. So.
No, definitely, and Montez Ford was involved in one of the moves of the week, as far as I'm concerned, when he did that breathtaking leaping somersault plancha over the top rope onto Cutler on the outside. The height that he got, I mean, I mentioned in last week's NXT episode that the height he got on his frog splash and he kind of just showed his pure athleticism here with the height he got over the top rope there onto his opponent. But the guy is a phenomenon, and I think that the management team behind the curtain are definitely paying close attention to him, and if they are, I think he could be going a long way.
It makes me want to see a match between him and Ricochet, because I would imagine that he would barely be a step behind him. Obviously there's the experience level for Ricochet, but it would be an exciting match. Can you top this kind of thing? But,
definitely.
Much like the Velveteen Dream match.
So now we're going to go into your and mine favourite subject, which is NXT UK. So this is the episode aired last night, the 30th of January, but this was recorded as part of the NXT Aftermath tapings, which took place the night after TakeOver Blackpool. Now, you were there, weren't you, David? So
I was,
you was there for night 1 and night 2, weren't you?
I was. I got reminded about that by a lot of my friends the next day who put pictures of me looking half asleep in the second row. Look for the hat, people. But that's me. But I mean, TakeOver. I mean, you talked about my favourite shows. That's definitely up there in the list of TakeOver shows. I mean, there was a high expectation because obviously NXT TakeOvers in the States set the bar very high, and we're hoping that we'd get something that was even a fraction as good, but we're needing to worried with people like Moustache Mountain and all that. So it was, and again, an experience. It wasn't just the show itself, it was the crowd was fantastic. I must admit, I felt that on the second night they weren't quite there, but it did come across well on TV when I watched it back. It seemed to flow quite well. The crowd seemed to be quite good. It didn't seem as good on the night. I think it was probably because I was in the 12th row instead of the second. Probably put a bit of a dampener on it, but and it set things in motion with Walter and where things are going from here. So you can't really you can't ask for anything more at this point. And again, it's development into its own brand. It's not just the developmental people. It's exciting, and as many people would have told you the night after TakeOver or the same night, it was. TakeOver is the bar that really Raw needs to set itself to, and all the other shows. I mean, SmackDown's watchable, but Raw is, we all say it's far too long. It could do with, an hour cutting off it, and just concentrating on the wrestling and less of the. I think that's the thing about NXT. It's like there's less of the gaga. It goes back to the days of when you watched WCW or something where you got matches and promos about the matches and what this one's going to do to that one, and a reason to fight. It's a good guy, as Jim Cornette said, a good guy and a bad guy and a reason to fight. That's all you need. You don't need diva searches and all this other, hoo-ha and, wrestler courts underneath the ring and all the rest of it, Just get on with the wrestling. That's what we want to see.
And speaking of wrestling, the first match of the night was Dave Mastiff, the Bomber Dave Mastiff, versus Primate. So both men square off with a couple of body checks to start the match before Mastiff levels Primate with a running crossbody. Primate appeared to have quite a bit of support from the fans in Blackpool, so he seemed to kind of get a good reception. Would that be right in saying that, David?
I would say a lot of it is because obviously there was a while ago where we thought that the Primate, Jason Prime was done. Like, he was putting on his social media that he'd had a serious injury, I think, to his jaw or something like that, and he may have been done. And how it is, we all tend to be a bit pessimistic with wrestlers when they say they're hanging it up, because they never really do. But and I think it was just that feel-good thing of you're doing well now. You made it to NXT, good for you, kind of thing. So and there was that good vibe all weekend long, and I love Dave Mastiff. For me, he's everything. Creator should have been on World of Sport. He's athletic. He's a personable fella if you've ever had the pleasure of meeting him, and he's got that character that, him and Eddie Dennis. I really enjoyed that monster feud and whatnot.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the end of the match. The end of the match comes in this one here when Dave Mastiff launches Primate across the ring with a German suplex, and he follows it up with his trademark huge running cannibal, and then hooks the leg and pins Primate in 6 minutes. But quite an enjoyable match. Primate had a little bit of offense there, and he did manage to get Mastiff down after a couple of clubbing blows. But it was an obvious result at the end, but quite an enjoyable match, I would say.
Yeah, and I think it's also nice to see these fresh faces that we know from the independent circuit getting the bigger stage, and it's nice to see her or him on that stage and getting the shot, whether it's temporarily or on a longer term basis. I mean, the pessimists again see that brands like this are killing the business and this, but the business is never looked better right now. The British scene is the envy of the world. You've got the Americans tuning in and everything like that. They love what we do, and we've had the luxury of having Matt Riddle over here and before he signed with NXT, and we've just been spoiled, really, compared to the years ago where oh my God, Chris Hero's coming over and it was once in a blue moon, and now every week you can see somebody a big star if you want to.
It really is a good time to be a wrestling fan in the UK. So moving on, we then see highlights from TakeOver Blackpool with the wild ending when Tyler Bates got clotheslined off Zach Gibson's shoulders from a James Drake dive onto the outside, and then before they put Trent Seven away with their Ticket to Mayhem finisher, ending up the first ever NXT UK Tag Team Champions. Go on. Sorry, say that.
I said GYV. I love the grizzled young veteran.
Oh, most definitely. And they were out to do announce to their audience as new tag team champions. So Gibson reminds us that he is Liverpool's number one. And while every other tag team were focusing on coming up with catchy nicknames, they were focusing on one goal. Whilst Moustache Mountain were focusing on finding shiny new pants, him and Drake were focusing on one goal. Gibson said that TakeOver Blackpool, they stole the show and became NXT UK Tag Team Champions, and they sure did steal the show on that occasion. Sid Scala then comes out onto the stage and congratulates the new tag team champions and told them that they will not be short of challengers. He said that you want the opportunity to prove why you are world-renowned champions. Johnny Saint has set up a match between Drake and Gibson and Only Lorcan and Danny Burch on a future NXT for the NXT UK Tag Team Championships, and that will take place soon. And I think that they were recording a few episodes of NXT UK while they were over in the States, and I think that match possibly got recorded over the weekend. It will be on our TV soon, so that's definitely going to be a pretty awesome match. I'm a big fan of Only Lorcan and Danny Burch.
Sure.
Definitely very physical.
And then, again, no secret, I love the grizzled young veterans. I'm fortunate enough, I've got Fighting Spirit on my doorstep, and I get to see them perform for their own company, which they run right there. And, I don't think you dispute it either. Right now, Zach Gibson has got the best heel heat of anybody in the industry. They're making up chance chanting it. I was there at Royal Albert Hall when they were taking their shoes off and everything else. I was there for the birth and all that. So he is unreal, and his promos just get better and better. And more power to him and James Drake if he ever gets to speak. But
well, yes, he tries occasionally. Yeah, he gets a chance eventually. But I think from their match at Takeover Blackpool, the one thing, and I said this in my review of the show, one thing that I absolutely loved was the fact that James Drake, he doesn't have the spotlight shone on him very often, but that was his match. That was his match where he kind of put his stamp on it, and people actually recognised him for being the superb wrestler that he is. Yeah, he really is, completely underrated. But I think that match really shone a big light on him.
I never had any doubts. I saw him and Fabian Aichner at a Progress show, and they absolutely stole the show. It was a fantastic match, and both of them are so underrated, and it's just onwards and upwards from here.
Absolutely. So then we see a graphic on our screen showing a match that they've made for next week, which is going to be Ligero versus Mark Andrews. So that will be covered here on next week's episode, and that should be a cracking match. Was that recorded while you was in Blackpool, David?
I believe so, yes, and the fans flat out refused to just call him Ligero. He will always be El Ligero.
Exactly.
I'm sure that, and it was a bit of a strange one, that, because you got the babyface dynamic against each other, so the fans really couldn't decide. I think they just enjoyed the spectacle, really. The athleticism on show, and we always know we're going to expect a good match from those two. They'll always deliver, So, but it is a weird one to throw out there, when you've got that babyface versus babyface dynamic. But it's very hard. Somebody usually has to play subtle heel. Unfortunately, they didn't in this case, but still a good match.
Absolutely. And now we're going to talk about kind of the match that I've been looking forward to all week, and you could probably give your insight in this. But Walter's NXT UK debut against Mark Stars. What an amazing entrance and theme music for the ring general. Absolutely love it. He stood there on the ring entry on the ramp with a bright light behind him, and the music starts. It's must have been goosebumps when you were there in person.
Definitely, especially the first night when he walked out and faced up with Pete Dunne. Excuse me a second, because I'm going to cough. Jack Stars, I thought it was quite amusing because he had a kind of star graphic, and I thought he's going to need his energy drinks and whatnot when he's getting in there with Walter. But I was hoping for a few more chops, being used to seeing what. What I found strangest of all was Walter seems to be favouring using the powerbomb to finish people off rather than the sleeper hold that we kind of know him for. So I'm just wondering if that's where he's going to stay with the powerbomb, or go back to the sleeper. But either way, he's amazing, isn't he? Because he's something to deal with. But
absolutely,
and we can't wait soon enough for him and Pete Dunne to get in there and absolutely tear the blazers out of each other. I mean, I've seen them work on DVD on a WXW show, and that was good enough. But on this bigger stage, it's probably going to be something else. So.
Yeah. So the match went 3 minutes, and Walter he kind of nearly finished off Mark Stars with a running drop kick, sending Stars into the corner, and then put him out of his misery with an almighty power bomb for the 3 counts. And it was an impressive power bomb. So I've always liked the big power bomb moves from the big guys like Sid and Kevin Nash. Absolutely, and I think it's made to measure for somebody like Walter. So long may he continue using that move. So an awesome debut, and I think that the fans truly loved it. It only went 3 minutes, but definitely a fantastic debut, one that we'll remember. And then we see Walter walk backstage, where he's greeted by first of all an outraged Joe Coffey. Then Walter comes face to face with
Coffey.
Was it Mark Coffey? Oh, my apologies. They look very similar. No, you're quite right, because I know that it was announced later on in the show that Mark Coffey and Walter will be facing each other next week, so that's going to be a pretty good match.
Yeah.
But then even more interesting in the segment, Walter comes face to face with his former ring camp stablemate Moustache Barthel. Of course, we know him formerly as Axel Dieter Jr. and alongside Fabian Aichner. And Marcel tells Walter that whenever he needs friends over here, they've got his back.
I was absolutely drooling at that moment. I wouldn't lie to you, because the way I see it, the way I'd play it anyway, I don't know where they're going to go with this, but I would see like Walter, kind of refusing. I want to do my own thing, respect, but I'll do my own thing, and just basically, palming them off over and over again. But then eventually, when it comes time to face Pete Dunne, maybe having them for backup, because obviously Pete's got, Moustache Mountain and British Strong Style and all that. So it would be, and then it leads to, combinations of those matches, which again will have me drooling, So that whichever way they go with it, whether he decides to be his own man or we get a larger, more nasty European Union, then it's a win-win situation again, isn't it? So
it is. But that was a really good segment. And then we went on to a match between Ginny and Casey Owens. So this was a little bit back and forth, but Ginny managed to get the win in the end. Now I think that she won via her makeover facebuster from the turnbuckles for the pinfall victory. So the crowd did appear quite quiet through much of this episode, and you did say that it probably came across different on the TV. You did say that they might have been a bit quieter on night 2 compared to night 1. Do you think it was because it was a different audience, or because they had such an amazing night the night before? What do you think?
Expectations the night before, coupled with maybe a little unfamiliarity from a few fans for these newer faces, but. It seems they're going with Ginny, maybe reliving and reigniting a feud with Tony over a new belt. But hopefully, and it was nice to see Casey getting an opportunity again on a bigger stage. I'd seen her the night before up on the balcony along with the Scottish contingent, and I'm thinking, I'm wondering why she's here, just just taking in the show or whatever. But and again, she's come along a lot in the last few years from somebody that you were sort of, she's a bit kind of she's okay and all that, and now she's really getting there with the aerials and the character and what have you. So I'd like to see her in NXT UK on a more sort of full-time basis. So hopefully that'll happen. But Ginny, great at being here. One little side note on that: Jimmy Havoc absolutely hates the fact that she does hurricanranas when she's a heel. He said so. He says, "You're a heel, don't do hurricanranas," So, but that aside, Ginny's great at being the super bitch, and the fans have got their set of responses for her, which is always funny, and I will look forward to if that's the way they're going with Tony, and obviously who I'm going to be cheering for.
Yes.
But we'll put that aside. I'm trying not to mention it. People think I've got a one-track mind, but never mind.
So moving on, we've got, let's see, after confronting Johnny Saint and Sid Scala backstage, Rhea Ripley was granted a rematch for the NXT UK Women's Championship against new champion Toni Storm. So we've just mentioned Toni Storm. Yep, you're very happy with that. So we will see that match in 3 weeks' time, and I'm guessing this is another match that they recorded while they were over in the States. We then see a tweet from General Manager Johnny Saint, who announces a match for next week's show between Mark Coffey and Walter. So yes, I thought it was. I wasn't sure. Yeah, Mark. It was definitely Mark Coffey. You are right. Yes.
It is Mark Coffey. I can guarantee you it's Mark Coffey because I watched the match.
It was.
And it is actually a good match. So I won't spoil it for you, but it is a good match.
Right. We look forward to that one. So then we have our main event of this week's NXT UK: Moustache Mountain versus Marcel Barthel and Fabian Aichner. Now, before we kind of talk about the rundown, I just want to say we all love Moustache Mountain. Of course we do. But I've been really, really impressed with Marcel Barthel and Fabian Aichner over the last couple of weeks on NXT, NXT UK. They had a match last week against Oney Lorcan and Danny Burch that was absolutely off the charts. I think it was only a 5-minute match, but they did so much in it. There wasn't a lot of storytelling, it was more moves, but it was just one big move after another. It was awesome, absolutely awesome. So yes, Moustache Mountain are of course recovering from their loss against Drake and Gibson at TakeOver Blackpool, and in one spot from the match, Fabian Aichner launches bait high up into the air, bringing him down to earth, kind of face and chest first. So that looked quite a painful bump.
Isn't he?
Yeah, he really is. Let's see, Bate manages to power out of a body scissors, lifting his opponent up, Fabian Aichner, before tagging in Trent Seven. There's a great power bomb from Seven on Aichner before executing a snapdragon suplex on Barthel. So lots of fast-paced action here. The match goes 16 minutes, and the end of the match comes after Fabian Aichner gets bundled to the outside, allowing Bate and Seven to hit their clothesline snapdragon suplex combo for the pinfall victory over Marcel Barthel. So former NXT champions win on this occasion, and a really good match, a very enjoyable 16 minutes.
Easily match of the night, and and super talents involved as usual. But for me, and I'm sure you've noticed it too. But you just look at Marcel Barthel, and you look at his mannerisms and his look, and everything about him. Just to me says money and superstar. I could see him in the mix on the main roster with Velveteen Dream and everybody else, just becoming like a new set of superstars. You see, the problem with WWE at the moment has always been you've got the top star, whether it's a John Cena or Roman Reigns, and then you've got everybody else. It was nicer when we had that choice of, if somebody went down, you always had about 4, 5, 6 faces that could then fill in, whether it was Triple H, Undertaker, Kurt Angle, whoever, you know, and we need to get back to that where we've got a little bit of variety in our main event scene, you know, not just him and everybody else, you know. So that is for the future for me. It's like your Velveteen Dream and Marcel Barthel and many others, but Pete Dunne and But I think that's what. If I don't know how anybody couldn't look at Marcel Barthel and not see superstar, because I think his mannerisms and everything. Even the fact at the Liverpool tapings that I was at not so long ago, that he got over the 9 chant. Just saying the word 9 was over, and the people remembered it at Blackpool and did it again. You know, so hopefully that'll help him and shift a few T-shirts for him as well. So.
Definitely. So I think NXT UK, I've championed it since day one, and I know you have as well, David. But I think, a lot of people are saying it's the hottest brand on WWE at the moment. You've been there, you've seen it. Would you agree that it is the hottest brand on WWE at the moment?
Well, I've never been lucky enough to get over to the States for an NXT takeover there, but, it's right there. Week to week, it's like either NXT or NXT UK, closely followed by everybody else, It's like, and obviously everybody's got their own brands, whether it's new AEW or Ring of Honor or whatever, but consistent, mainstream TV show, you can't go wrong with NXT or NXT UK. It's consistently entertaining, there's new characters, there's young stars, you don't have to be 6'5". I mean, look at Tyler Bate, the guy's 5'8", 5'10", and he's, again, a machine, and likeable and personable and all that, so there's something to get behind. Everybody's got something that they can latch onto and enjoy, whether it's the women or whatever. It's a brand that's building on itself, and it's just a feel-good factor because you've seen these people when they were nobody. Or I don't like to say that, but they were in your local, church hall or whatever, and now you see them succeeding, and we can all feel good about that.
Absolutely. Well, David, that pretty much draws us to the end of this episode. I think we'll agree that NXT UK was definitely a thumbs-up show this week. I thoroughly enjoyed both of them, and they've just taped another 3 or 4 weeks worth of NXT from Full Sail last night, so we'll be seeing them episodes come through from next week. So lots of development there, and hopefully we can talk to you more about NXT and NXT UK in the future, David.
Yes, we lied to the fans. We went over.
Excellent. Yes, indeed.
Just a little bit, but that's a good thing. I think. I feel like for the first time in a long time, like wrestling is going in a very positive direction. It doesn't matter if you like AEW, it doesn't matter if you like WWE, whether it's NXT or whatever. There's things to look forward to instead of going, oh God, I'm doing this out of habit rather than out of enjoyment. So it is a good time for all fans, I think.
It really is. It's a fantastic time. So thank you very much for joining us this week, David. And hopefully we'll get you along again for the ride sometime in the future. So that draws an end to this episode of Wrestling with Johners. I hope that you've enjoyed this episode. If you did, please don't forget to subscribe and shout about this podcast. Tell your friends, tell your family. Keep listening to Wrestling with Johners for all of your weekly NXT UK, NXT, WWE, Progress Wrestling updates. You can listen to this podcast pretty much anywhere where you get your podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Podbean, YouTube, you name it, we're pretty much on there. You can get in touch with the show if you want to. You can email the show wrestlingwithjohners@gmail.com. You can visit our Twitter page @withjohners_pod. We've got a YouTube page where you can listen to this podcast or see all my videos from New Orleans from April last year. Just simply search Wrestling with Johners, or you can visit our Instagram page @Wrestling with Johners, as simple as that. So that's pretty much it for this week. Thank you very much. Thank you once again to David, and hopefully speak to you all soon.